Welcome to this special episode of After School. My name is Jamil Zaki. I'm a professor of psychology at Stanford University and author of Hope for Cynics. Today, we'll be exploring why humanity is losing faith in itself, what that's doing to us, and how any of us can escape the cynicism trap. Let's jump in. Imagine two people, Andy and Ben. Andy believes most people are out for themselves and will take advantage of him if they get the chance. Ben thinks most people are kind and gives them the benefit of the doubt. Knowing nothing else about them, which of these two would you guess is smarter, more successful, wiser, and more moral? If you imagine trusting, open-hearted Ben is dull, complacent, and ignorant, you're in good company. Our culture often belittles hopeful people, in part because fewer of us feel hope ourselves. In 1984, about half of Americans believed most people can be trusted. By 2018, that had fallen to about a third of Americans. Humanity has lost faith in humanity, and even more in our institutions. Between the 1970s and 2022, the percentage of Americans who trusted the presidency fell from 52 to 23%. Newspapers from 39 to 18%, Congress from 42 to 7%, and public schools from 58 to 28%. We are living through a trust deficit, and as our faith in each other drops, the future we can imagine darkens. In 1986, 69% of people in a Gallup poll believed the U.S. was headed in a positive direction. In 2024, that number reached as low as 21%. When trust is depressed, cynicism booms. And in the most cynical turn of all, our culture has glamorized gloom, pointing our suspicion towards anyone who dares look on the bright side. We've stereotyped hopeful people as naive, privileged, even toxic. But are we right to do so? In a 2019 study, researchers introduced hundreds of people to characters like Andy and Ben and asked who they would pick for various intellectual and social tasks. 70% thought cynics like Andy were smarter than trusting people like Ben. 85% believed a cynical person would be socially smart, for instance, better at detecting lies. This is called the cynical genius illusion, and it's just that, an illusion. We see the cynical genius illusion all over popular films, like Forrest Gump, where the main character is portrayed as happy, goofy, and carefree, but not so bright. Smarter characters are often portrayed as pessimistic, harsh, critical, and paranoid. This attitude is even more widespread online. Take a peek at your social media feed. How much of it presents a negative view of something? We're doomed. It's over. Someone's stupid. This idea is flawed, etc. The comments are even worse. Tearing something down is an easy way to place yourself above it and appear superior. It's much more difficult to present a case in favor of an idea. Most of us put our faith in people who don't put faith in people, but the science is clear. Cynics, as it turns out, do less well on cognitive tests and are worse lie detectors than more trusting people. Why? Cynics assume they already understand everyone, so don't pay attention to what people are really like. Gullible people unthinkingly trust others, but cynics unthinkingly mistrust them. Cynicism also hurts our relationships, communities, economies, and society itself at nearly every level scientists can measure. Dozens of studies demonstrate that cynics suffer more depression, drink more heavily, and even die younger than non-cynics. In the 17th century, the philosopher Thomas Hobbes encapsulated cynicism in his book Leviathan. Hobbes argued that people need government to rein them in, because left to our own devices, human lives are nasty, brutish, and short. Ironically, Hobbes's words best describe cynics themselves. If cynicism was a pill, its warning label would be long and ominous. It'd be poison. So why are more of us swallowing it each year? The cynical genius illusion is one reason, but our culture also spreads two more myths about cynicism. Myth number one: cynicism is safe. Every act of trust is a social gamble. When we place our money, secrets, or well being in someone else's hands, they have power over us. Most people who trust will get burned at some point. Those moments lodge themselves inside us, making us less likely to take a chance again. By never trusting, cynics never lose. They also never win. Refusing to trust anyone is like playing poker by folding every hand before it begins. Cynicism protects us from predators, but also shuts down opportunities for collaboration, community, and love, all of which require trust. And though we forever remember people who hurt us, it's harder to notice the friends we could have made if we'd been more open. Myth number 2, cynicism is moral. Isn't hope a privilege? Not everyone can afford to assume the best about people, especially if they have been harmed by a cruel system. In a world full of injustice, it may seem heartless to tell victims they should look on the bright side. Maybe optimists hope wash problems while cynics shed light on them. This idea is intuitive but backwards. Cynicism does tune people into what's wrong, but it also forecloses on the possibility of anything better. There's no way to change a broken system if it's a mirror that reflects our broken nature. Why then do anything? Cynics tend not to. They vote less often than non-cynics, sit on the sidelines during social movements, and even support authoritarian strongman leaders who promise to protect citizens from each other, even if it means giving up some of their freedom. Cynicism is not a radical worldview. It's a tool of the status quo. This is useful to elites, and propagandists sow distrust to better control people. Corrupt politicians gain cover by convincing voters that everyone is corrupt. Media companies trade in judgment and outrage. Our cynicism is their product, and business is good. Beliefs shape our lives and the world we create, and cynicism is turning ours into a meaner, sadder, sicker place. All of this is deeply unpopular. Americans trust one another less than before, but 79% of us also think people trust too little. We loathe political rivals, but more than 80% of us also fear how divided we've become. But underneath all this bad news, there's great news. Cynicism has brought us to a point where we focus too much on the negative. But that also means that when we overcome its siren call, pleasant surprises are everywhere. Decades of research find that people underestimate how generous, open-minded, trustworthy, and friendly others are. Of course, there are jerks out there and terrible harm being done. But the average person underestimates the average person. By paying closer attention to the data, we can rediscover the values most of us share and work for them together. The psychologist Richard Lazarus wrote, "To hope is to believe that something positive, which does not presently apply to one's life, could still materialize." In other words, hope is a response to problems, not an evasion of them. If optimism tells us things will get better, hope tells us they could. Optimism is idealistic. Hope is practical. It gives people a glimpse of a better world and pushes them to fight for it. Unlike cynics, hopeful people engage civically and take part in social movements. They see the ills of the world, but also have faith in their fellow citizens, and know most of us want something more. We fight for a better future because we can see it more clearly. The alternative to cynicism is not to be naive, but rather to cultivate hopeful skepticism. Cynicism is a lack of faith in people. Skepticism is a lack of faith in our assumptions. If cynics think like lawyers in the prosecution against humanity, and naive trusters argue for the defense, skeptics think like scientists instead. They don't use blanket assumptions, but pay attention to data, figuring out who and when they can trust. Skeptics are quick, agile learners. They protect themselves when they must, but also make connections, collaborations, and friendships. Hopeful skeptics add to this mindset. They realize that most of us have a default that is too negative, and when they pay closer attention, many people will be better than we assume. Humanity's faith in itself has dwindled for decades. By giving up on hope, we commit ourselves to lives of suspicion, division, and isolation. But that's not a choice we have to make. Hope is much sturdier, wiser, and active than more people know. Building greater connection is not a matter of ignoring the evidence or putting on a pair of rose-colored glasses. Whether we know it or not, most of us are already wearing mud-colored glasses now. Hope simply requires that we take them off and witness each other more clearly.